Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome back to Copeland Visuals. I'm your host, Christopher Jr. That sounded very news-like. Anyways, today we're talking about composition. Why I'm positioned here instead of here in the center, and the rule of thirds and leading lines and all this science that's gonna make or break your photo. It's weird how science and art go together. Okay, so the first technique I want to talk about is the rule of thirds. This is a rule that photographers have used for forever, and basically there's these grids in your camera, both in the viewfinder for some cameras or in the live view for some cameras, depending on what your camera maker model is, but you can also just envision them in your head, that splits your camera up into 9 boxes, 2 lines going horizontally and 2 lines going vertically. You line your subject up in between where those lines intersect, and for some reason your eye just automatically goes there. I'm not really sure why. It's science, I guess, but it's just what happens, and I feel like a lot of people don't use this technique who really should. And if you've never heard of this technique, this is gonna help your photos dramatically, because people just smack their subject in the center of the frame every single time, and it's so overused, and people just always just put everything in the center, and it just makes everything seem sort of clinical, and there's no artistic value to it. And I feel like a lot of times if you just put your subject off to one side, it's going to add something that's different. It's kind of counterintuitive, because you think, well, it's got to be symmetrical and just smack it in the center and it'll look good. But really, you don't want your photos and your videos to be clinical and symmetrical. It's an art form. You want to do all the different things. And you know that shell image that is this little curve and that thing? Well, that has another thing to do with the rule of thirds, because it doesn't make sense, but it makes sense at the same time. If you don't know what that is, I'll leave some links in the description to that. It would take too long to. The next thing that I want to talk about are leading lines. I don't really have leading lines in this subject. Of course, I'm using the rule of thirds right now, as I always do. But leading lines are super, super, super cool. Basically, what they are is any sort of lines in your photo, whether it's an actual line on a wall or a street or a walkway that has railings that are going straight. Any sort of line in your photo that is leading to the subject, because your eye wants to naturally follow that line, so it brings your eyes to the subject so that you can see the subject and not everything around it. Now, the viewer still is going to see everything around it, they're just not going to pay attention to it as much. That's kind of how you got to frame your photos when you're shooting. The next thing I want to talk about is just shooting head on at eye level. Everybody always shoots at eye level. Get down low, get up high, shoot down on things, shoot diagonally on things, shoot up on things, shoot at all sorts of different angles, shoot things at more than one angle. Don't be afraid to try random stuff that, oh well, I don't think that's gonna work. Why not try it anyways? Just because. You never know. Photography is art. It doesn't necessarily have to be clinical. It's not supposed to be this sort of thing where, oh, I've got to follow all the rules, which makes me to the next point. If you like the composition that you have and you think it's good, don't follow the rules that I'm saying right now. These aren't strict things. It's not supposed to be clinical, like I said. These are just tips that are generally going to help you. Okay, and the last final thing, this is the biggest thing that is my ultimate pet peeve. I don't know why, but when people don't level their shots, if the horizon isn't leveled or the camera's just off a little bit, it's the easiest thing to just take the time to straighten your camera out, but it makes a huge difference. And some people say, well, I can just change it in post, but that messes up with the clarity of your image, and it also crops in on the image, and it doesn't work all that well. So if you can just take the time to level your camera when you're actually shooting, it's gonna help you a ton. You can buy little levels that go on your hot shoe, or if you're shooting with a tripod, you can get the levels that are on on your tripod, because most tripods already have them, but if you don't, you get a base plate that has the level. There's all sorts of different leveling techniques that you can use. There's also levels inside some cameras, electronic levels, and if you don't have any of those, just do it by eye. You can get a lot closer than just not paying attention to it at all. At least you're paying attention to it. It's getting a lot better. It may not be perfect, but it's better. So, that's it for today's episode. If you did enjoy this sort of just me talking and just a couple photos like displayed instead of the other style of video where I had more different movement, like the video, comment, all that stuff in the description, and don't forget to subscribe if you enjoyed, because that's always appreciated. See ya in the next episode.